You lived under Milošević, a dictator, and helped to successfully overthrow him without a single bullet.
Within 2 years, a movement grew from 11 people to around 20,000 people, which is a lot. Serbia is a small country. And at the end of the day, that if you really want to change, the people you really need to persuade and really to bring on board are the people very different from you. And in that case, the opposition parties, and whether we like them or not, and in the bunch of 14 opposition parties that we were able to persuade to unite, there are at least 8 that I hated.
He helped to overthrow a dictator without throwing a single bullet. His work has inspired activist movements from Serbia to South Africa to the streets of London. And today, in a world of cultural totalitarianism, global governance, and creeping digital control, his blueprint for peaceful revolution has never been more relevant. My guest is Srdja Popovic, founder of Otpor and the Centre for Applied Nonviolent Action and Strategies, or Canvas for short. He is one of the world's leading thinkers on how ordinary people can resist modern tyranny. I extensively studied his vast body of work to inform my own activism during COVID, which I was able to contribute to the movement through our strategic initiatives to tackle government overreach, mandates, restrictions, and more. And he is someone who I greatly admire. Now, a quick note before we dive in. There were moments in this conversation, particularly around the climate movement and net zero policies, where I would have loved to explore the more authoritarian direction of these agendas. But in the spirit of this discussion and the respect of Srdja's time and your time, I chose to focus on the strategies, tools, and insights that can help us all to build a freer future. And as always, any views expressed are his own, and I encourage you to take from this what will serve you on your own path to freedom. Please welcome Srdja Popovic to the Dan Astin-Gregory podcast. I recently discovered that over half the people who regularly listen to this show still haven't hit subscribe. So let me ask you this. If you're looking for conversations that challenge your thinking, help you to rise above the noise, and give you the tools to live more freely, then please hit that subscribe button. We're on a mission to reach over 50,000 subscribers so we can get these bold, uncensored conversations in front of the people who need them most. And here's my commitment to you. Every single week, I'll show up with the most courageous guests, the deepest insights, and the truth that most people are too afraid to say out loud. This is more than a podcast, it's a movement. So if you're with us, subscribe now and let's build something that truly matters.
I've studied your work for a long time, and during COVID, whilst I appreciate rooms like this have different views on what happened in the last 5 years, I was part of the resistance in the UK that was tackling what I felt was an imposition of our civil liberties and human rights.
Mm-hmm.
And I spent about a month studying your work. I read the Blueprint to Revolution cover to cover. It's the single most recommended book that I've given to other activists since I discovered it.
Oh, wow. So Scribe should give you a little cut.
But we use that book as a document to plan, to execute, to deliver upon our rallies, our campaigns, and it was integral. So when I'm sat in a room like this today and hearing all these stories from across the world that have been inspired by your work, I thought I have to talk to this man.
Thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure.
Yeah. So here we are. I mean, my audience, I've already been in this activist. I've never considered myself an activist until 2020. Life changed me, but you have a very different story. So I want to give our audience a little bit of context. So you lived and operated under Milošević, a dictator, and helped to successfully overthrow him without a single bullet.
Mm-hmm.
Could you tell us briefly about your story, about how that became part of your reality?
Okay, first, my name is Srdja Popovic, and very much like you, when I was young, I was never thinking I will end up being activist. Basically, then Milošević came to power, and that a lot of the stories you hear at Total Freedom Forum are very similar. These are the people whose life just dramatically changed, and they were faced, as we were, with a pretty tough choice of fighting or fleeing.
Mm.
And what happened to me when I was 19 was that I grew up in a decently liberal one-party system called Yugoslavia, which was kind of decent middle-class life where you could plan your future. Within 2 or 3 years, the country fell apart. 2 and then 2 more civil wars started. Money went from relatively not an issue to the situation where you have 100% inflation a day. My parents, who were the Top Gun journalists, ended up selling the smuggled petrol on the street. So I had to do a job at the age of 21 to kind of survive. And my brother was drafted for going and killing some Croats, which he refused to do. So he was threatened by the military court and ended up living in Italy. So every single part of your life has fallen apart within the 2 years. And when you are in a situation like this, then once again, you have choice to flee, which I had. My aunt was living in Canada. I didn't want to do that. We stand back and fight, which is what you do when you are 19, because you don't have anything to lose except your crazy head. So basically, the student movement in Serbia was actually a pretty logical response to the pretty desperate situation. Started clumsily and naively in 1992, becoming a little bit more strategic and around the local elections and cooperation with opposition in 96, 97, and then grew into the full-scale national movement between 98 and 2000. Name of movement was Otpor, which is a Serbian word for resistance. I don't know what your listeners are particularly interested on, but there were several unique features. At least we thought they were unique because we didn't study history at the time, and Serbs has this tend to think that everything starts from them. But basically it was a youth movement which effectively grew out of urban university rock and roll educational background and was capable to spread across demography and geography, which is something that movements need. They need to tap into different constituencies in order to become truly appealing, not sticking only to one generation or one ideology or one part of the country. Second, it came out with a clear strategy, which is something that Serbs are not prone to. But because we did it without strategy several times and it didn't work this time, we thought, okay, let's understand this. Milošević is minority. He rules by force without the popular support. When he loses elections, like it happened in 96, 97 local elections, he will manipulate them and steal them, and then it will be the trigger from building millions from the street. So we learned from our attempts and failures, and this is how the strategy was built. So within 2 years, our movement grew from 11 people to around 20,000 people, which is a lot. Serbia is a small country, 6 million. We were capable of persuading opposition to run united. We were capable of mobilizing a lot of young people, which increased participation in the election dramatically. We were aware that counting and documenting election fraud is important, training 30,000 monitors, and we knew that he will lose, and if he loses, he will steal. So it's like that there was this big thing around the stolen elections. Regimes do steal elections. The question is whether you can put a price tag on it. Mm-hmm. And we were able to put a price tag on it. 11 days after stolen elections, Milošević was faced with a protest in every single corner of the country, around 300,000 people in the street of Belgrade, and a general strike. Wow. So people around him were looking at whether they're going to go down that rabbit hole and vanish with him, or they will persuade him to concede. He conceded October the 5th, 2000, and then the new transitional government was sworn in. Later in the process, I went to government and the parliament for 3 years. I was serving under the first Serbian reform Prime Minister Zoran Đinđić, who was unfortunately killed by reminiscence of old regime and pieces of mafia in 2003. In the same time, the other part of story begins. There is this documentary which people don't have anything more clever to do can find on YouTube and spend 57 minutes learning about the Serbian revolution. It's called Bringing Down Dictator. And there's this really cool, rich guy called Peter Ackerman who says, oh, this is so appealing. I'm going to translate this into all the world's languages. That was before AI, and while movies had their physical home or DVDs, a physical body. And somehow that physical body found its way to the weirdest place on the planet. And there was a monk in Burma watching it and later saying to the New York Times that this is what sparked protest in Burma. In 2006, there were Belarusians came to us, Georgians came to us, Ukrainians came to us, Zimbabweans came to us. There were situations which somebody look at, it's like, I know you from the movie, you are the hero in my country, so where the heck is your country? It's Maldives. It's like, where is that? And I'm serious. Yes, without training Maldivians, so it's like, it's serious. This is the real life story. So that, especially after the large effects of Georgian and Ukrainian movement, persuaded us to make the organization. The organization is called Canvas, which is a acronym for Center for Applied Nonviolent Action and Strategies. It's based out of Belgrade, and it is kind of focused exclusively of teaching people skill how to organize the people power movements.
Yes.
So that's a very long.
Yes. No, thank you. I mean,
you can edit it.
No, it's and maybe I told that's the part I take out of that. Canvas, the book that I mentioned, we were lucky that we had these tools at our disposal, and we weren't trying to overthrow a dictator. Some of my audience may say that we were, but we were trying to change policy, and we were successful in one case, a very successful case, which we used a lot of the different techniques, pillars of power, messaging techniques, and we used all of these different and spectrum of allies. We used all of these different tools that really helped us put a framework. So I could learn from what you've put together. But when you were building Otpor, it sounded like at the beginning it was kind of the energy was there and there was a lot of mobilization based on people's anger. But where did that strategic insight come from? You didn't necessarily have, or did you? Did it come from just road testing and trialing?
Quick break to tell you about the Thinking Society, our flagship course to help you reclaim your mind in a world of noise. Over the course of 6 weeks, you'll dive into the psychology of propaganda, cognitive bias, and the war on truth, and how to become radically better at thinking and seeing clearly in a world gone mad. If you're tired of being told what to think and ready to think deeply, independently, and courageously, this course is for you. Go to weareelevate.org/Thinking Society or click the link in the description to join us now. Now back to the episode.
Came from experience, and one of the things is that there was also toolbox then. It was called From Dictatorship to Democracy. Like, tools were over there, we were just reluctant to use them. There are several parts. When you take a look at the specifically Serbian movement, there are several very important parts of the learning curve. First one, 92, when we occupied universities and singing all we are saying is give peace a chance, while Milošević was mobilizing provinces to go and slaughter Croats and Bosnians. That was our first lesson, that our little constituency is not enough. So this is not where the numbers are. It's where the cool people are, but cool people are 2% of the society, and you need a little bit more. 96, 97, we figure out that for institutional change, you need institutional players. And in that case, the opposition parties, and whether we like them or not, and in the bunch of 14 opposition parties that we were able to persuade to unite, there are at least 8 that I hated. But this comes with the understanding that, it's like if you want to make it black and white, you need black and you need white. And it's like too much of a gray zone makes things pretty complicated. And all of these things were kind of learned by experience. But I'm super happy to hear that some of these tools are important. And what you're doing is actually what you told me that your group was doing was actually living proof of something else that I keep telling people in forums like this. Is like very against or very on the opposite of a classic political science. And I can tell you this because I'm a non-scientist teaching in a political science department. So it's like, okay, it's like I'm very weird, like I'm an alien there. And all of the social science will tell you, okay, take a look at the conditions. How many people are happy? How many people are unhappy? What is the economic threshold? What is the educational threshold? Where are the big cities? Because all these conditions matter, but skills you bring in a conflict matter more. And this is the presumption that my organization is based upon, is that the main difference between failure and success is skills. And anecdotally, you can take the best possible skills in the world and, for example, Venezuela. So you have an unpopular government, you have so many people who are living close to the poverty range. You have enough of the urban people, you have enough of the educated people, you have a very influential diaspora, you have the great regional players who don't like regime, you have at least one major superpower at the time, United States, that wants this regime to be dismantled. You have total dependency on oil combined with sanctions on oil, so the state coffers are empty. And I can list why these are all ideal conditions. Most importantly, you have the opposition that wins elections and wins them in a landslide, like Maduro lost last presidential elections on the scale of 2-1. So it was like 60-30. It was not even a margin. It was devastation. But there was no planning process on how to capitalize on stolen elections, and he got away with it. So once again, there are principles of successful nonviolent struggle, namely vision and unity, strategic and tactical planning, and organization discipline. If you implement these principles, you're more likely to succeed. If you fail in one of these principles, then you're more likely to fail. Sometimes you can succeed with spontaneity, but basically I used to tell people that there are only two types of movements in this planet. They're either spontaneous or successful. So it's like, if they're successful, it's because they're meticulously planned, and in most of the cases, spontaneity will only get you killed or demobilized.
Well, I think that's so important because we came up against that within our movement. So there was almost like a conflict between those who wanted to be strategic and plan and strategize, and it almost became that they were ostracized from the activists who want this, who are leading with their heart on the sleeve. And I feel that too. But somehow we had to find a way to build the synergy between that and that spontaneity and the heart, but blend it with the mind. And it was a battle a lot of times. How did you overcome that?
This is if I was given a dime every time when somebody told me don't have time for planning, I'm too busy protesting, I'll probably have a Bentley by now. But basically the word Jaguar, I like Jaguar better. Jaguar, not Bentley. So green.
Yes.
Anyway. So the understanding that planning is very important, and then how you connect these two things. First of all, movements are driven by emotions. Social movements are driven by values. You need a social fabric of movement. You need a movement identity, where this is a purely ideological identity, or more likely belonging identity, the peer pressure, all of these things matter. But these things are not mutually exclusive, nor there is only one type of planning. You need people with different skills in movement. Some are great street organizers, some are powerful speakers, and some are better in playing chess. So, like in any successful group, you need division of labor. And understanding that you actually need these skills is the first step in acquiring them. And that can be done through different types of processes. One way to do it is figuring out how to recruit people who have the right skills. So if I'm going to build a movement, I will start with basic skills, which are like, oh, anybody here was a recruiter. Oh, we need some money. Anybody knows how to fundraise? Oh, we need a web page. Okay, it's AI will build it now. Anybody who can manage the social media, anybody who understands the messaging, anybody who can write a press release. Oh, we are getting in trouble. Maybe we need a lawyer. It's like all of these things is where you build your little skill pool. And then the second, a little bit more advanced level of it, and many movements have done it. Many recent movements in UK have done it. Extinction Rebellion, for example, was particularly good in doing it, is training people. Because the best investment in people power movement is making your people more powerful. I mean, it cannot be simpler like that. And there are numerous case studies and serious academic writing and reading about how movements that invested into training their numbers are 10 times more effective than the movements who kind of don't take a look at this component. And it's like, I can quote you, but trust me, there's a pile of books written by serious political scientists about how is that possible. So not only understanding that you need skills, but recruiting people with these skills and figuring out how to put these skills on a very local level. Why is local level so important in nonviolent movements? There are three reasons. First of all, every change is local. And it's nice that there was this big quote in environmental movement, think globally, act locally. It is true for everything. Every change is local. Another thing is if you're capable of nurture and equip your local troops or foot soldiers, as I hate to call them soldiers, that's crap. But basically, where the rubber hits the road, if these people are capable of doing things, then first of all, you spread the ownership of the movement, and this is so important. The movements become powerful when people are doing it for themselves, not for their leaders, not for the ideology, not for the climate change, not for something big and touchable out there in the air, but for their own ship. That's because the very nature of human beings is super selfish. We will move our asses only for the things we consider personally important. The bigger the ownership of the movement, the bigger, and then you pour in all of these talents and all of the skills, and in business language, now you don't have a movement of members, you have a movement of shareholders. Yeah. And when people invest, they're more likely to invest in. And this is where these dynamics really change. So figuring out how to go out of this core group and go down to the ground, also figuring out what matters to the people in the ground, and then building a skill set for the people on the ground, and on the top of it, building the organizational capacity, which will give them enough freedom to run their own things. This is where movements become really impenetrable and complicated. And it's not only particularly useful for dictatorships. In dictatorships, these movements very often develop this way because the head knows it will be cut off. So the reason why we were highly trained, decentralized, 35, 50 local cells in our movement was the fact that we knew that eventually, aside of our playing cat and mouse with the regime, 10 or 15 people who were running the show from the central office will be identified, targeted, arrested, expelled from the country, satanized, disabled. Yeah, whatever is the way to disable them or make our life more difficult. We were planning for this moment because the strategy was there, and the army of little brigades on the ground was running the show. So if you chop off the head, the legs will continue in the right direction. So it wouldn't really help to chop off the head. And very often the movements don't think that way. And especially in the last 10 to 15 years with the social media, movements kind of idolize this idea, oh, we are leaderless. Okay. Movements is moving people from place A to place B. If you want to move 5 people, 10 people, 11 people, 11 million people from place A to place B, somebody needs to lead that. And however centralized or decentralized leadership may be, however democratic or well-structured, disciplined, military type of execution, the organization decision-making process may be, the leadership is necessary part of every. And this is something that movements really switch. We had this debate about the actual Serbian movement, and the first thing I put on the screen, what is unique with this movement, is decentralized and highly participative, but there is an organization structure. Yes. And this is a very difference between Occupy Wall Street, street agoras, where anybody who come every day can bring decision which will affect everyone, and the movements which really works. So participatory democracy is, well, I know Churchill said it's maybe not the best way of the government, but we couldn't figure out the better one. And I agree with that. I love democracy. I love collective decision-making process. Once decisions are made, then they need to be executed. Democracy exists in making decisions. Then the discipline kicks in. And this is the big difference between talking about the things and doing things. Once we decide, even if the decision is wrong, that you're going to do A, B, and C, and in case that in C, moment C, shit hits the fan, we will do either D or E. And once that path is set and decided upon, then the execution kicks in. Democracy in executing decisions is anarchy. And anarchy doesn't work well in social movements.
Fascinating. How then in that environment do you deal with leader problem, which comes with everyone who've, to some context, I worked with a group of leaders and we tried to model the type of approach. I think we got there in the end, but there's always this belief that every leader thinks that their idea, their way is the way. And it's not necessarily egoic or narcissistic, but everyone believes that they've got the thing that's going to win. And if we all just do that one thing, the problem will go away. How do you negotiate that strength of character that comes with a leaderful movement, if not leaderless?
That's a very interesting dilemma. And I don't have the straightforward answer to this. And my best answer is the one I learned at universities. When a student have a clever question, you say it depends. and in this case it really depends. So first of all, it depends on how close are these people and how strong are their personal relationships. Personal relationships and trust is makes a big difference. If movement starts as a small group of committed people sharing a value and wanting to do something about it, and if its original growth is organic, and when I say organic, Marshall Gantz calls this snowflake model, which means that I recruit the first 5 people I know, and you recruit the first 5 people you know, and then they recruit the first 5 people they know, and we call this recruitment from your phone book. So it's like that. This idea that the snowflakes are popping up, it's a very different fabric than if my group comes in coalition with your group and with that group and with that. So decision-making process really differs where we are talking about the individual who already have strong personal relationship as opposed to group who already have agendas. Yeah. So this is, in first case, you can let the 1,000 flowers grow. And you can really say, okay, first of all, we need to understand that there is not one single silver bullet for any change bigger than, replacing the mayor. I mean, if you want to replace a mayor, you're going to look at a corruption case, you're going to make it public, you're going to make the damn scandal in it in the city of Leeds or whatever happens. Sorry to the Leeds mayor. Maybe she or he is a great person. And then eventually elections will come in and that person will step down, will be replaced with a different person. That's silver bullet. So there is a visible end to this, but you are fighting climate change or systemic racism or something really big. There is no silver bullet. There is not one single thing that would change this thing. Why? Because now we are talking about the pillars, and the real theory of pillars, which is probably the most important part of understanding the theory of change we advocate, is understanding that power in the society comes from the people, but power is exercised through institutions and organizations. If you really want to change things long term, you need to change it within institutions. And yes, you can press these institutions from the outside, but still the change needs to occur within institutions. So you need the laws passed. You need a constitution change. You need these big things, and you need to change the way the media report about it. It's like you need a court cases. So all of these are institutions. And understanding that your strategy is actually the answer to the question, what is the shortest causal chain between me and change? And that you actually need to plan backwards, not forward. So if I want this thing to happen in the future, then what's the thing that needs to happen 7 days before them, and then 2 months before that, and then 6 months before that, and then today? So understanding that backward planning is actually a long-term strategic approach, and listing these pillars in order. And if you talk military battle, it's called the order of battle. So this is not, we are not running all and go and fight, but then the first artillery goes, Air Force, this and that, and eventually infantry engage, and all this kind of things called order of battle. You have a very similar thing in nonviolent struggle, and you approach most accessible pillars first. And this is the first rule of the game, is to put all of these institutions which impact change. And you say, okay, my enemy is status quo. It's not a person, it's not a government, it's not a, rarely it's a person. In dictatorship, it's a small group of people, but it's simpler in dictatorship because you have a very clear opponent, somebody who is monopolizing, like Vučić in Serbia. He is the courts, he is the police, he is the parliament, he is the prime minister, he is everything. And it's easy because it's 10 people around here. But, it's like you want to tackle the climate change in UK, you cannot really pinpoint one guy and say, okay, if I replace this guy, then it will be game over. It won't be the game over. Because you have companies, and you have banks, you have habits, and you have electric cars. And then some of these cars are kosher, some are not. And it's like we can talk about this forever, It's like, but understanding that it's a multi-pillar thing is where you start. And that brings you to the beginning of the questions, because this is where people can spawn their ideas in a different context. And if you make them think around the pillars and you make them decide about which pillar to engage in which particular order, then how kicks in. And tactics of nonviolent struggles are the how of the things. And you do not start with how of the things. You start with what of the things, anything. And so movements make this mistake that very often they think it's all about tactics. It's like if you were listening to the questions today on the panels, it was like, and then they brought 250,000 people and nothing happened. So what? On the day of Donald Trump inauguration in 2017, that was one single day of the largest protest in American history, which achieved nothing. The fact that you can bring millions of people on the street, if there is no clear demand, if you don't recruit from there, if there is not what is going to happen tomorrow, numbers, they're important, but numbers per se don't bring change. Numbers put in a context of strategy really make change. So once again, back to tools. You start with your group, you develop your circle of trust. If you are a small group, if you pick the coalition, though, it's a very different way of building consensus. Then the question is, what is the smallest common denominator between these different groups? What is this thing we can agree on, and what is this thing we can disagree on? So we agree to agree, but we also agree to disagree. And we don't need every single passenger to be on this train between us. My knowledge of British geography is pretty rusty. Okay, I'll try it this way. You travel from Bristol to St. Andrews in Scotland. Mm-hmm. And some of these people will be trained by London. And some of them will be trained by Glasgow. And then eventually some will land in wherever, Aberdeen or whatever is, Highlands. And you don't need everybody to go to Highlands. Some of the largest changes in the world, and that's once again, it's a different model. You talk about the different groups and organizations. Some of the most important changes in this world came as a coalition of unlikely partners.
Yes.
Polish solidarity was a large movement which ended up with beginning the end of the Cold War. The significance of it was more than just Poland, and it was made of blue-collar workers led by Lech Walesa, who wanted to unionize under communist regime, which regime didn't like, urban intelligentsia that was too clever and figured out that the communist economic model is not going to be sustainable, and the Roman Catholic Church. It's like different motives, very different people, not somebody you would expect to see in pub around the pint.
A quick time out, because if you've been questioning the systems shaping our world, then you'll love what we've created with The Thinking Society. The Thinking Society is a 6-week online course designed to help you sharpen your critical thinking, spot bias and manipulation, and make sense of the chaos without losing your mind or your relationships. You'll learn directly from brilliant minds like Sinead Stringer, David Sharalambos, and Dr. David Thunder, and join a community of people who actually want to think for themselves. Head to weareelevate.org/thinking society or hit the link in the description to learn more and sign up today. Now back to the conversation.
I often shock when I teach American students a lot. It's amazing how people are not thinking behind what this little window of history they get in the textbooks, like how the women got right to vote in this country. And it's like a first one, suffragette movement. So these were the liberal women who were like, oh, women need the right to vote. And it was amazing effort. They were super brave and super organized. But at the time, the suffragette movement was like 3% of the society. So they could never achieve it. So they partnered with the most conservative women that were organizing themselves in churches and were like preaching. And so they were super right-wing in terms of so many different beliefs that they were sick and tired from the fact that their men got drunk. So they wanted power to stop their men of getting drunk. So the very liberal suffragette woman and very conservative suffragette woman, and if you put the word abortion between the two, probably the war will start immediately. So we agree on what we disagree. We don't talk that things. We have this thing first, and this thing first is we get a right to vote. And then they eventually, after the large and exhausting and super effective campaign, finally got right to vote. And the first thing the new Congress voted on was prohibition. It's like, this is history. So people don't see that very often this change was driven by the very unlikely partners, very different groups. And at the end of the day, that if you really want to change, the people you really need to persuade and really to bring on board are the people very different from you.
Easier said than done. But the common window, that's the point. You touched upon something I think is important that I'd really like to draw upon, particularly in the world that we live in now, where decisions aren't necessarily made at the national level. You've got the global bodies, institutional bodies, and you've alluded to it. But I think right now if you have a political disagreement with, say, the United Nations or the World Economic Forum or WHO, and you want to rebel against that particular centralized institution, which may represent thousands of individual NGOs and different trying to understand where the power lies and how to influence something that is almost invisible, and particularly in the context of today's reality where the world is experiencing all this uncertainty. So people are becoming more authoritarian at this central level. How does one resist? How do you build an organization that can resist global governance if it is contrary to the aims of freedom and human rights?
Well, I mean, it's a tough question, and once again, it depends on the institution you pick on. But a lot of this is the hard work of the power mapping, and what I will be doing after this podcast is showing people downstairs a very early version of how we see this, and I think this is where really research and analysis comes in. And if you want to take a look at, once again, I strongly believe that you can teach AI how to teach you this. So this is the first answer is like, there will be a way to use technology to map these massive institutions. And I mean, it has been done by grad students in the past, and it's a really hard work. But the more complex the change you want to achieve, the more complex the map of opponents you need to achieve, the more is important to understand how they function and where there may be the buttons or vulnerabilities or potential allies within this map structure to pull the things. Because the generally pretty easier said than done way of doing it is the question, can you eat an elephant? And the answer is yes, you can eat the elephant, but spoon by spoon. And takes a lot of time and figures out where to start from, tail, nose, there, tasks, things of that kind. And understanding that the elephant is not going to be standing and waiting to be eaten. That's also a very important part of it. And it may resist or turn his ass when you want to eat a leg or something like that. So it's a very dynamic process. But I think, once again, the answer I normally take to the people is like, think big and start small. It's very much about how you start, because like even if you're able to map, even if you're able to understand the depth and length in which you need to go to tackle phenomena like climate change, it ends with whether you are able to give people something meaningful to do. Once again, I'll repeat this. People tend to stay engaged as long as they think that they are doing something meaningful. That can be something very simple, that can be something very small, that can be something bigger, that can be something less risky. In case where the risk is high, you want to give people less risky thing. So you don't call people to demonstrate in Iran because they'll be killed. And this is not what you want. You want people to participate in something and still get away with it. That's a very important thing. When we are talking oppressive places, when we're talking less oppressive places, they want to see the meaningful change. So let's take a look at a very successful campaign. I was blessed to take part in. People would say to teach them how to do it, but I just teach them tools. They develop the campaign. There's this amazing, very complex thing once upon a time there was one of the worst regimes in the world in South Africa, and it turned racism into the systemic thing called apartheid. It was beyond disgusting. It was like the most embedded piece of shitty racism that you can imagine. It was like it was the ideology combined with the laws, combined with the systemic effort to deprive black people from education so they will always be poor. I mean, with physical repression, with court, like it was multi-layered thing. But that, in the same time, that state called South African Republic was very well organized, super rich, powerful in export, had at the time the largest African military, and was strongly supported with some of the most powerful financial players in still lurking colonial superpower named United Kingdom. So how do you tackle that thing? Oh, the black people go to the street and protest. Just kill them all. It's like you won't go to jail. You kill the black person. It's like killing a dog. It's like you get fined for this. And I really like the whole, and there's a very nice analysis of this in Swarthmore database. It's one of the best databases of these cases. You type in South Africa. Now, this is how you dig into this thing. So take a look at a lot of sanctions they got, but still they're surviving. And then you take a look at a lot of local protests, which didn't work. And very often these monsters are weak in their wallet. So there's a moment in time where South Africa was under all types of sanctions, but they're still able to function effectively. And the more repressive regime becomes, the more expensive for them status quo becomes. Repression is not a sign of strength, it is a sign of weakness. It is the most expensive way to rule people if you need to police them all. Okay, so coming back to South Africa and the final understanding that there's this digging into these things, the people start doing boycotts. Boycotts are more likely to be effective and disruptive because they disrupt the economic base. In the same time, they're less likely to be met with a wide oppression because oppression doesn't work against the tactics of non-cooperation. They can kill you, but you're not still buying. So it's not like street protests where you can be chased back. In this case, you pull your cooperation, and these boycotts work very well against the authoritarian governments. And what happens is people start boycotting goods, and the government became poorer, and then so their budget became strained. And then somebody find the silver bullet. Somebody really did a research, and it was told it's a group of students from Port Elizabeth, and somebody was doing tactical mapping. That was before the internet, and they figured out that one single bank in UK, namely Barclays, is 30 or 35% shareholder in National Bank of South Africa. So now the target is clear. But what can we do in South Africa to tackle Barclays? The answer is you don't do nothing in South Africa to tackle Berkeley, but you organize students in Oxford and Cambridge and St. Andrews to divest their universities from Berkeley. And then you start boycotting businesses that are credited by Berkeley. And then you have citizens who are pulling their accounts of Berkeley. Because for Berkeley, it's a game of numbers. So if they lose more by continuously investing in the Bank of South Africa, by all of these disruptions, then eventually the board would sit down and do the right thing. So very often, if you look in these big, monstrous changes, you will find 1, 2, 3, 4 big business empires. Business empires are a historically well-studied and really good target for nonviolent companies, and we can see this unfolding very well and for a while. And that I was the witness to the same multi-pronged, multinational confrontation. Once again, I'm not one of these people who blame UK for everything. I love UK. Some of my best friends are Brits. I'm proud to know Peter Gabriel. I grew up on your wave music. I love your culture. You never gave me visa. I was you do. It's very complicated to get it though. I was a rector of St. Andrews for 3 years and I had to renew visa every 6 months. Oh, it's hard to be a Serb in the UK. So but basically what you do is really interesting. It's like there was this big movement called Fridays for Future, which was looking into how to tackle climate change on Global South. So there are the big projects in Global South. I think it was Colombia, Philippines, Uganda, Rwanda, something in Africa. I'm not super sure. And then there was in the same time, it was done and funded by another lovely UK band called Standard Chartered. Is it the correct name of the?
Yes, the Chartered is a bank.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So we were doing this they were doing this tactical mapping. I wasn't doing anything. I was just directing them on how to think. And they found out that they're activists, because it's now we're talking about the big transnational movement with all these great kids. Like the eldest person in my workshop was like 22 years old, something like that. And then they went into this and say, okay, we go in front of bulldozers in Uganda or wherever is this, they're building a dam which will destroy lands. And now that there is even a, it's like whatever, a lithium mine or something else, a lot of bad things. And so all of these things were confronted in order to disrupt business as usual in a place where bulldozers are. At the same time, they were confronted by phone calls and protests towards the headquarters of the Standard Chartered. And then the final name of the coffin in this was somebody, and this is tactical, man, this is where you really need to think analytically. So there was somebody in the room, a boy, who was a huge football fan. And he said, wait, Standard Chartered, where do I know this name? Is it on a jersey of Manchester United?
I think that's Liverpool, I think.
Liverpool.
Maybe, I might be.
Liverpool.
Sorry.
Liverpool was so big at the time. You're like, wait, but this is Liverpool. This is a blue-collar city. It's everybody in Liverpool is so proud about, being like...
What if we wrong about the city?
Yes. What they did, they start talking to Liverpool fans. And then they made a whole campaign to make everybody around Liverpool Football Club being disgusted with Standard Chartered. And this is their flagship sponsorship here. This is when they start paying attention and diminish their funding of some of these projects. But this is a very long explanation how there is no one silver bullet, but through the series of things, you finally find that plug it, you pop it up. But it's so much planning and understanding that, and this is this butterfly hurricane theory. So how the billboard on the stadium in Liverpool can impact, the dam built in India, but it can.
Yes.
And it all goes through understanding that these systems are complex, but somebody is doing the job, somebody else is suffering from the job, there is a corrupt government which gain license, but eventually there will be a board of the people in some room that is counting money. And you go after that and say, okay, what will make these people change the decision? The answer is very often if they start losing it.
Yeah. Wow. Why not? I know we've got.
I need to go.
Yeah, you have to go. Yeah.
Okay, there's a few more sentences. Okay, so so glad to be on your podcast. Read Blueprint for Evolution. I can send you a lot of cool, useful things on Canasopidi.org. We have short videos and all this kind of stuff. But please do learn. Like, learning helps. Understanding skill helps.
Thank you so much, my man. What a beautiful conversation.
Sorry for making all the bad jokes about this.
It's the very best. Great to meet you. I think I'm coming to the same thing as you are now. So Julie kicked out of here 10 minutes ago. So we've done well. Thank you so much. What a beautiful conversation. And yeah, thank you so much for the work you're doing in the world.
I hope you found this conversation as thought-provoking as I did. The strategies we've explored today aren't just for toppling dictators. They can help us confront the invisible hand of global technocracy, resist creeping authoritarianism, and most importantly, build grassroots movements that go far beyond protests and slogans into real, lasting change. If you're serious about having to create a freer, more peaceful world, then we can use these tools to make a difference right now. And if you want to stay connected and be part of the Free Humanity movement, then please make sure you join our newsletter at freehumanity.org, where right now we're taking on campaigns to address the issues around the WHO and help to build a global peace movement. Finally, if you're brand new here, please subscribe. And if you'd like to support our work in keeping these bold, independent conversations going, then head over to danastingregory.com/supporter, join our community of free thinkers, and be part of the after episode discussion. Thank you for listening or watching. And as always, live free and prosper.